2 consecutive Winston Pro Stock championships naturally leads one to assume a third. Warren Johnson has consistently made more power than everyone. But in 1994, the double-barreled Wayne County Dodge Attack has changed all of that. The WJ Oldsmobile started the 94 season well enough, taking the Winter Nationals from Darrell Alderman. But at Houston, a staging battle with Scott Jeffrey on got tempers flaring.
They're trying to play his game.
But the cracks appearing in Warren Johnson's armor has allowed Scott Jeffrey on to take the points lead as Johnson began losing early to drivers like arch rival Bob Clinton.
We dug ourselves into this hole, we'll have to dig ourselves out.
Welcome, everyone, to NHRA Winston Championship Drag Racing Competition from the 7th Annual Allied Signal Autolite Nationals at Sears Point International Raceway in Sonoma, California. Hi, everybody. I'm Dave McClellan, and welcome to the wine country of Northern California. Early this morning, it was cloudy and overcast. Right now, there's lots of sunshine, and a huge crowd is absolutely loving the action here at Sears Point International Raceway. If you remember last year's show, the temperature was nearly 115 degrees. This year, almost the opposite, and the good weather may have tempted some of our racers to get just a little bit greedy. The first to fall victim, the #1 qualifier, Tommy Johnson Jr. Within a few feet off the starting line, Tommy Johnson Jr. ran into problems. Oil started coming out of the engine and then the flames, a huge fireball. But he was able to bring the car to a safe stop, and his dreams of an Autolite Nationals victory literally went up in smoke and fire.
It was great to qualify #1, but I'd have took number 16 if it's what I got to get the win. And he had a problem, I think, from the moment I hit the throttle. I heard a funny noise, and it smoked the tires. I tried to pedal it and heard a big bang.
Sorry to see you out.
Yeah, me too. It was a disappointment after #1.
Then it was Connie Coletta from his #6 qualifying position, currently 3rd in the Winston points chase, that ran into his share of troubles. He had a great run until he crossed the finish line. When the left rear tire exploded, Coletta had his hands full. So did his opponent, Stevie Foster, who did a masterful driving job in avoiding Coletta.
You know what? In 1984, I ran a 5-liter Can-Am car here. I would have been proud of that move back then. Man, all I saw was him come across in front of me. I figured the only thing I'm going to do, if I went to the right, I was going to take us both out. So I just went to the left, unloaded the other parachute. Thank the good Lord. Is Connie okay?
He's fine.
That's all that counts. We can fix these 2 clunkers.
After examination of the chassis at the far end of the racetrack, the damage looked to be quite severe. For an update on that story, let's join Steve Evans in Connie's pit area.
Well, Mac, there's a lot of bent-up pieces here in Connie's camp, and there's a wing stand that will never see action again. When a tire explodes that violently, it can do damage all up and down the 300-inch wheelbase of one of these cars. And Tim Richards, it looks like you guys are finished. I don't see anybody working on it.
Well, the car doesn't look too bad when you look at it, but it's just too dangerous to continue. The frame has been on the car. The engine doesn't line up with the rear end, and there'll be another race next week, and we'll hit it then.
We'll see you then.
Thanks.
You know, there is one man who's going to benefit from all of this, and that is Don the Snake Prudhomme. In that Connie cannot race him in the next round, Prudhomme has a bye that takes him to at least the Final Four and a big points harvest that puts him right back into the thick of the championship chase. Connie gets his 200 for winning in first round, but won't earn any more, and he's going to slide a couple of positions. Mac?
Steve, I'm in the Moon Eyes pit area of Kenji Okazaki, and this man, Big Jim Dunn, is playing a larger-than-life role in today's funny car story, because we found out just prior to round #1 that Jim Dunn is assisting in the tune-up of the McDonald's Oldsmobile driven by Cruz Pedregon. In the first round, Pedregon came up against Al Hoffman, currently 2nd in the Winston points chase, and it literally was no contest as the Cruiser had a 510 low ET of eliminations. Al Hoffman, well, needless to say, he was none too pleased.
Well, looked like Larry Miner acquired a new crew chief over there, and it paid off for him. With Jim Dunn tuning 2 cars out here, it gives him a little advantage, so we'll be ready for him the next time.
Steve, I would guess that there are some other people that are not too pleased with what Big Jim Dunn is up to.
Dave, here in John Force's pit, Big Jim Dunn is not going to win any popularity contests either. John Force, you liked that hamburger car right where it was on the ropes, and it's up.
Yeah, I was really excited there, especially with Hoffman going out, but then all of a sudden I saw the Moon Eye group and the McDonald's group all running around each other, and I figured Dunn's in the middle of that pile somewhere, and he's a tough character.
But you can get even here in the next round, right?
Well, we're sure going to give him a shot, but I was watching old Kinsey with that 450 light. That kid's plenty dangerous, but it's going to be an exciting race.
So it'll be John Force against Jim Dunn's prime car with Kenji Okazaki in just a few minutes. Dave, how about Pro Stock?
Steve, the story in Pro Stock here at Sears Point is the same as it has been for the last 3 or 4 races, Team Mopar. But the exception is it is not Scott Jeffrey on the points leader capturing the headlines. Friday night in the primetime qualifying session, Darrell Alderman established a new national speed record at 197.80 miles an hour and recorded the second quickest elapsed time in history at 7:01. That sent him into eliminations as definitely the favorite. When you field a 2-car team, you come to every race with one goal in mind, and that is to put both cars into the final round. That is a distinct possibility for Team Mopar here at Sears Point, as Scott Jeffreyon qualified second on the other side of the ladder with a great 7:08. But as we head into the semifinal round of competition, there is one thing that stands in their way, and that is Family Johnson. Steve?
Dave, you talked about Warren Johnson's struggles at the top of the show. He came to Sonoma with 2 cars to try to double his development time. Billy Ewing in the newer car that Warren has been driving, and Warren himself in old Reliable that won the championship last year. Friday afternoon, he decided he needed a fresh engine. He stayed up a total of 60 hours with no sleep, built a power plant that has never seen a dyno, and qualified number 3 at a 7.09. He had a good night's sleep, and he goes into the Final 4. Ewing got beat first round. Warren goes into the semifinals in a must-win situation against the Dodge of Scott Jeffreyon, and Warren does not have the lane choice.
Steve, let's pick up action in round number 2 of Top Fuel Eliminator, and this is the man that benefits from having nobody in the opposite lane. Connie Coletta was to have been there, but Don Prudhomme in the Skull Bandit will receive a single, as we saw the damage just too severe for Connie to continue. Prudhomme had qualified number 3 with a great 481 and had a victory over Bob Vandergriff Jr. in round number 1. Now on the single, he's got an option. He could either take it easy or stand on the throttle and try to gain lane choice in the semifinal round. The lane choice is decided by whichever driver has the quicker ET from the previous round. Prudhomme gives him a mark to shoot at, 486 at 284 miles an hour. The snake in the Final 4. The 1994 NHRA Autolite Nationals is being brought to you by Allied Signals Autolite Spark Plugs, guaranteed for 2 years no matter how far you go. And by Quaker State, the intelligent oil for longer engine life. Scott Coletta, the Winston points leader, getting ready to go. We'll have that action in just a moment. National Raceway just north of San Francisco. Top Fuel Eliminator round number 2 at the Autolite Nationals. In the far lane is Scott Coletta at the wheel of the American International Airways car. He's leading in the points right now to the far end, and Steve Evans.
Snake, with another 480, you may have the most consistent car in the pits.
Well, let's hope so. Starting to warm up a little bit. I think we're real pleased. I think Wes going to be real pleased with that, the 486, you know. Just on the burnout felt a little funny to me. We had a single, so I think we can learn something on this, you know.
Prudhomme on his final strike tour, throwing a real challenge to every other competitor in Top Fuel, including Scott Coletta. Scotty had qualified number 7 with a 486, beat Mike Dunn in the first round and holds the lane choice over Pat Austin, who defeated a troubled Eddie Hill in round number 1. Austin, having his own share of problems, had qualified at a 503. His dad, Walt, boy, you don't think he isn't pumped up. He's trying to transfer that enthusiasm to son Pat, sitting inside the Castrol Syntec dragster. But if you want a challenge, try taking on Scott Coletta. He has won 3 national event titles in a row, is going for an unprecedented 4th in a row here at Sears Point. Up in smoke goes Austin from a wheel-standing start to a tremendous finish at a 491. Scott Coletta continues his march to possibly another championship title. His speed at the finish line, 295 miles an hour. Back at the starting line, crew chief Jimmy Brock checking over the engine for his driver Joe Amato at the wheel of the Team Valvoline car. Amato, 5 times a Winston champion, is racing the legendary Kenny Bernstein in this second round matchup. Our onboard cameras first high atop the wing on Joe Amato's car. Next in the cockpit with Kenny Bernstein. This is a battle of Winston champions. Amato 5 times in Top Fuel. For Kenny Bernstein, he won the title 4 consecutive years, but that was all in funny car. He has not shared that same success in the dragster. Amato qualified number 4 with a 483 and beat Jim Head in the first round and earned lane choice in the process, as Bernstein defeated Corey McLenithan in the McDonald's dragster in round number 1 and had previously qualified number 5 at a 484. Dale Armstrong, the brilliant crew chief for Kenny Bernstein, has got to be a troubled man. It's a wonder he even can sleep at night, because Bernstein has not been doing well this season. They have had lots of problems. The performances here at Sears Point, though, are indicating they may well be on the right track. Oh, and Bernstein just drives away from Amato for 89 and 298 miles an hour to Amato's trailing 496 at 281. So Kenny Bernstein knocks out the number 2 man in the Winston points chase. Here's another team that knows what trouble is all about. Blaine Johnson at the wheel of the Ride and Decal car came out of 4 consecutive Winston titles as the top alcohol dragster kingpin and has found very little success in Top Fuel. Here, he is opposed by the Sequent computer car, driven by Michael Brotherton. What's the challenge? Brotherton is the quickest Top Fuel dragster in the history of the sport at a 468. Let's go down to the far end of the racetrack. Steve is with Kenny.
Kenny, I know this is the last time you plan to run this car. You might have to reconsider.
I tell you, Dale may have to look at it and see, but we hope the next one we're going to will give us even a little bit more help. And I can't say enough of the work these guys have done. And Bob Brooks from AFT has helped us so much, and some other people out there, too, that helped us.
You were plenty sharp on the lights, too. Good job.
Well, you got to be when you race Joe Amato in that Valvoline car. I mean, if you think you're going to kid around here and wait on him, he's going to nail you. So you get pumped up for those guys when they're 5-time world champions. I know what that's like. You got to be tough.
See you next round.
Bernstein will be debuting his new car in 1 week, and you can see it right here on ESPN Speed World. It's a new 300-inch chassis car. This is Blaine Johnson, who has the quick time of eliminations here. He ran a 484 in his first round victory over Shelly Anderson. Blaine had qualified in the number 9 spot at a 496. Now, Brotherton's quick time in the 460s, the only driver ever to run in that 460 mark, came earlier in the season back up at Englishtown, New Jersey. Here he qualified number 16 at a 503 and was the opponent against Tommy Johnson Jr. in that Blazer that we saw at the head of the show. The lane choice here going to Johnson. He has selected the lane nearest the camera. The staging complete. Oh, and look at Blaine Johnson go. Now he's telling everybody, get out of my way. I'm on a fast track to the finish. 483, 297 miles an hour. Blaine Johnson keeps pace with everybody in Top Fuel and will race Kenny Bernstein in the final 4, and Blaine will hold the lane choice. The opposite side of the ladder finds the Winston points leader, Scott Coletta, up against the legendary Don Prudhomme, the Snake holding the choice of lanes. Steve?
Hey, that was a ride of your Top Fuel career, probably. 483.
Kidding, boy. I felt like
I don't kid about these things.
I felt like I tried to smoke the tires out there about 200 or 300 feet. I didn't think it was going to be as really good as the first run. Tried to detone it a little bit, but man, had to put a new short block in for this round. Blacked the crank on the last one, and but hopefully this one's okay, and we keep on going. That's a good run. Wow.
Is Top Fuel racing a little harder physically than you thought it might be?
Oh, the work's very serious. A lot of work. Totally different than alcohol, but God, we're having so much fun just trying to meet the challenge right now.
Well, you are. The California Sunshine agrees with this crew.
Blaine Johnson, headed to his first ever Final 4 appearance in Top Fuel, has back at the starting line KC Hollywood Spurlock, getting ready to go in funny car. We're back at Sears Point International Raceway. And this is the Autolite Nationals. You're looking at round number 2, action of Funny Car Eliminator. In the far lane is the guy that has had amazing success thus far this season, KC Hollywood Spurlock. At the wheel of the Fruit of the Loom, Activewear Dodge. Spurlock winning the very first race of the year, the Winter Nationals, after a 2-year-plus layoff. His opponent, Cruz Pedregon in the Golden Arches machine of McDonald's. Out in front of the car is the crew chief, Mike Green, but behind the scenes, the influence of Big Jim Dunn has to be felt. Where does it show up? In Pedregon's qualifying time of a 5:30. He beat Al Hoffman in round number 1 with a quick ET of 5:10. Spurlock had qualified 4th at a 5:15, but slowed to a 5:23 when he defeated Gary Densham in the first round. The 5:10 earned for Larry Miner and his team the lane choice here in round number 2. It was 2 years ago that Pedregon used that amazing late season charge with 5 victories in a row to snatch away the Winston Championship from John Force. Now they are beginning to show the kind of power that carried him to that Winston title, and you know every other racer in the category has got to be concerned. They're taking their time about staging. I don't know whether this is a psychological battle or they're just trying to gather their thoughts. Pedregon finally breaks first. He's into the beams, and he's late. Pedregon smoking the tires a little bit off the starting line, was able to recover and advance into the final 4 with a 5:38 victory at 280 miles an hour. Spurlock's performance off the pace except in one category. And watch this in replay. Off the starting line, Spurlock with nearly a perfect reaction time. He had a big advantage over Pedregon, but could not make it pay off. Even with the loss of traction in the first few hundred feet by the cruiser, it didn't matter at the finish line. Look at him just drive away. Pedregon advances to the semifinals.
Cruz, that was an interesting race. Take us through it, starting with the staging.
Well, I don't know. You know, I was just going up there doing my own thing, and, you know, I looked up, he wasn't staged, so I wanted to make sure I had plenty of heat in my motor. And I just rolled in when I was ready, and the car broke the tires loose. We recovered, we pedaled it. You know, you got to really pay attention out here because the sun's out, and we were ready for it.
Well, I could tell. Nice job.
Pedregon will savor this win, but one thing about it, he's going to have to sharpen his skills on the Christmas tree. Here's the Dale Creasy Pontiac, driven by Gary Bolger. The team out of Illinois is one of the real throwbacks to the early days of this sport. They don't have a lot of the trick devices that are on the cars, such as Chuck Etchels, his opponent here in round number 2. Etchels had qualified second at a 5:12, beat Whit Bazemore in the first round with a 5:30. Remember that time. Bolger qualified 10th at a 5:27. He beat Gordy Bonin in the first round with a 5:23, and that gives him the lane choice. What are some of the tricks that they are missing? The highly sophisticated clutch system. This is a more rudimentary version in the Creasy car. No onboard recording device, no computers like Etchels uses to log what happens on every one. Oh, and Bolger goes up in smoke as Etchels and the Kendall GT1 Dodge Avenger runs a great elapsed time. Look at that, 5:13 at 291 miles an hour. Etchels into the final 4. Coming up next, more funny car action on ESPN Speed World. The sun continues to shine at Sears Point International Raceway as Dale Armstrong looks on as the Budweiser King crew prepares Kenny Bernstein's Top Fuel Dragster for the challenge against Blaine Johnson in the semifinals of Top Fuel. That'll be coming up in just a few moments. Right now, Austin Coyle is backing John Force in his Castrol Chevy Lumina into position. We're still in round number 2 of eliminations of Funny Car. His opponent, the Moon Eyes Dodge Daytona, driven by Kenji Okazaki. This car is owned and tuned by Jim Dunn, that man that is doing double duty this weekend. Not only does he have to be concerned with this race car, he has also been hired on as a performance consultant and advisor, if you will, to the McDonald's crew, headed up by Mike Green and the Funny Car driven by Cruz Pedregon. Kenji qualified number 9 at a 5.20, beat Jim Epler in the first round with a great 5.16. John Force qualified number 1 at 5.05, He beat Ricky Ruiz in the first round with a 5:13. That earned him lane choice, and we see him here in the lane of choice of our quicker qualifiers and quicker winners here in the lane nearest the camera. Okazaki had the advantage off the starting line, then watched it literally go up in smoke as he lost traction. Force at a 5:21. 289 miles an hour, very creditable here in the heat of the day at Sears Point International Raceway. The body coming down over Mark Oswald at the wheel of the in-and-out car. He is opposed by Ray Higley in the red line synthetic oil machine. Oswald, a former Winston champion way back in 1987, came into this race, one of the few that he has run this season. They may not run many, but when they do, everybody takes notice, including the guy with low ET, John Force.
John, looks to me like you guys are just not going to beat yourself by smoking the tires.
No, Kenji gave me a heart attack. He was out there about 100 miles on me. He didn't red light, did he? No, he just did his job, and we were really concentrating on getting down the track. But boy, I saw a whole lot of that moon eyes. I'm sure glad he smoked the hot dogs.
That's going to give you lane choice at 21.
Who we rate, Cruz?
Whoever.
It don't matter. We'll step on her when the sun goes down.
Well, he may just have to, because he does race Cruz Pedregon, and try as he might, he still can't get away from a big Jim Dunn tuned funny car. Here is Mark Oswald. And for Oswald, it has been a great weekend thus far. 5:14, that qualified him third. He beat Tom Hoover in the first round. But he does not hold lane choice because Ray Higley had the quicker elapsed time. Higley came in as the alternate when Paula Martin could not show for the first round of competition. He had a 5:93, and believe it or not, Oswald was even slower than that when he smoked the tires. Look at the advantage off the starting line for Oswald, and look at the time, 5:26, 272 miles an hour. He heads into the semifinal round of competition. The Final Four has one of those matchups the crowds will travel miles to see. Cruz Pedregon races John Force. Force holds the lane choice by about 0.17 of a second. The other pair finds Mark Oswald against Chuck Etchells, and as good as Oswald's run was, it wasn't good enough to get in lane choice. 5:13 by Etchells. Quick ET of the winners gets to pick the lane in the semifinals. Pro Stock coming up next. Back at Sears Point International Raceway, I'm Dave McClelland along with Steve Evans, and we're in the semifinal round of competition of the Factory Hot Rods Pro Stock Eliminator, and you're on board inside the Mopar Parts Dodge, driven by Scott Jeffreyon. This is a must-win race for the Oldsmobile, driven by Warren Johnson. The GM Performance Parts car has fallen on hard times as of late, and if WJ hopes to make it 3 in a row as the Winston Pro Stock champ, he's got to start winning some rounds. WJ qualified third at a 7:09, beat George Marnell and Mark Howick in rounds 1 and 2. Scott Jeffreyon qualified number 2 at a 7:08. He beat Bob Glidden and Mike Thomas in his first and second round matchups and holds the lane choice by a mere 0.09 of a second over the Oldsmobile of WJ. Both cars equipped with 500 cubic inch engines maximum. They weigh 2,350 pounds minimum with the driver on board. Run through 2 gigantic Holley carburetors using pump racing gasoline only. But don't kid yourself. These are highly sophisticated race cars. The RPMs begin to build as the 2 cars stage. Johnson had the advantage at the starting line, but did not have the power at the finish, as Jeffreyon brings the Dodge home the winner, a 7:12 at 194 to a losing 7:15 at 194. Watch again. WJ with about 25 thousandths of a second advantage off the starting line. He hoped that that was going to be enough to keep him ahead for the full 1,320 feet of the racetrack and NHRA Winston competition, but it was not enough. By a mere few inches, Scott Jeffreyon wins it. The margin of victory at the finish, 4 thousandths of a second.
Take a deep breath, son. That was 0.04 of a second.
That's that Dodge horsepower at the other end of the track, boy. This thing was like a snake in the first part of the racetrack. It went every which way but straight. But heck, I'm just happy to be in the final. Hopefully my partner won't be too hard on me with lane choice here.
Let's watch that one.
His partner, of course, Darrell Alderman in the brand new Dodge Avenger. And this has been the quickest car all day long for Darrell. Get the lane choice in the final round. He's got to run better than Jeffrey on 7-12. Down at the far end of the racetrack, a disappointed Warren Johnson is with Steve.
Warren, all the effort you have put into this weekend to lose by only 0.04 of a second.
Yeah, but it was worth it. We were struggling for 3 or 4 races. Everybody knew it, but we went back to the shop, worked on some stuff, came back here with a new set of heads, bolted it on the engines, never been on a dyno. They're in trouble.
And you weren't dozing on the starting line either.
Well, I hope not.
What a job this guy has done.
Even after 60 hours of no sleep, Warren Johnson had the better reaction time. He's got to be interested in the outcome of the next race. Here is the Oldsmobile Cutlass driven by his son, Kurt Johnson. He had qualified number 5 at a 7:13, beat Billy Ewing and Larry Morgan in the previous rounds. Meantime, Alderman was the number 1 qualifier, the second quickest time in history at a 7:01. His first and second round opponents were Joe Lapone Jr. and Terry Adams, both going down to defeat. Here it is Alderman with the lane choice, 7:06 in round number 2, as opposed to Kurt's 7:21. The Pietro's Oldsmobile still not able to run the numbers that his dad has been in his Cutlass. Giving him as much as he could. Kurt running a 7:16. How quick was Darrell Alderman? 7:04 at 195 miles an hour. That's low elapsed time of eliminations and will give Darrell Alderman the lane choice against his teammate Scott Jeffrey on in the finals. As our replay shows, another advantage off the starting line by a Johnson, and the outcome the same. The Oldsmobile could not hold off the power of the Dodge as the Avenger blasts through at a 7:04. A great run indeed for Darrell Alderman, who has been having a tremendous weekend. The finals, the 2 Dodges. Scott against Darrell, no holds barred, no quarter given. Jeffrey on the points leader, trying to hold off this man.
The Avenger sounds like a superhero. 7:04, it is quite a car.
Yeah, I mean, for the son to be beaten down on the track all day long and then to go out there and run like it's a running in 60 foot and 330, and that's where it's making up a lot of its ET at.
Scott said the Daytona was all over the racetrack. What about the Avenger?
No, the Avenger went down through there just as straight as an arrow. It was like riding a boat on the water.
Don't sink it.
What a ride. Darrell Alderman gave us an instant replay, and as you could see, the intensity displayed on his face as he went through the quarter mile at a 7:04. Talk about intensity. This man knows about it. Don Prudhomme getting ready to face Scott Coletta in the Top Fuel semifinals. Coming up next. John Force, they're getting the Castrol Chevy Lumina ready to go for the semifinal round of competition. This is a standard procedure. Take it apart, put it all back together again, and put it on the racetrack. Something else should be a standard procedure for you, and that is receiving National Dragster. You can get it 48 times a year by joining the National Hot Rod Association. For just $52, you get a patch, a pin, a rule book, and a whole lot more. And if you call the number on your screen, you'll get a free copy of Diamond P's home video, Drag Racing 93. Make that call today. The crowd on their feet for this race because it matches the guy that is retiring at the end of the 1994 season, Don Prudhomme, against this race car driven by Scott Coletta. That is Dick LaHaye, Scott's crew chief. He is a former Winston champion himself as a driver and has provided the performance for Coletta to win 3 consecutive Top Fuel titles. That ties the all-time mark. He is trying for 4 in a row. Prudhomme has the chance to stop him. Prudhomme has the lane choice, quicker by 0.05 of a second in the previous round. Oh, what a great drag race, and Scott Coletta just pulls it out, 492 and 291. The crew in La Haye happy with that because they know their driver earned that victory. Why? It was the reaction time off the starting line, the advantage gained by the American International Airways car in the far lane that put him across the finish line just 10 thousandths of a second ahead of Don Prudhomme in the Skoal Bandit. Coletta won with a slower elapsed time of 4:92 compared to the Snakes 4:89. You know Scotty's happy.
Other than your father, is there anybody you would rather hole shot than Don Prudhomme?
Oh, boy, I tell you what, did he run quicker?
Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. I've been trying to keep focused and kind of had a little off weekend here, but hopefully, obviously, I did better.
You're 91, his 89.
Hey, good job, man. Thanks. Awesome. I don't know what else I can say.
It's awesome. He may be the first man to ever win 4 in a row in Top Fuel.
And he's got that chance, Steve. He's in the finals, and it'll be up to one of these two drivers to stop him. Blaine Johnson or Kenny Bernstein, and Johnson, believe it or not, holds the lane choice. You know, drag racing is a very intense sport. As Blaine noted, it is a tremendous amount of work, particularly running one of these Top Fuel drivers. But it is not all work, work, work. Earlier, Steve took a look at the vacation plans of two of our drivers.
Win or lose, tomorrow morning, Don Prudhomme and Kenny Bernstein will travel together to the next event in Seattle. In Bernstein's luxury bus? No. First class, American Airlines? Well, not exactly. They're going on their Harleys, just the two of them, 800 miles. This is Kenny Bernstein's customized Fat Boy, and you can't miss the Snake. He's got a tricked-out heritage. He wears black leather with fringe, bad to the bone. If they don't show up at the hotel by Thursday night, we'll call a Harley shop looking for him, or better yet, a chiropractor.
301 KB, signifying, of course, Kenny's first ever 300-mile-an-hour run in this sport. Now Bernstein in the far lane. Johnson with the choice of lanes. Here, nearest the camera. Up in smoke goes Johnson, and across the finish line goes Kenny Bernstein. 491 at 282 miles an hour. Boy, was that a great run for Bernstein, because back at the starting line, he had a problem or two that could have led to something far worse than a win. As Bernstein hit the throttle off the starting line, the Budweiser King picked up the front end. It held there for just a bit. The front wheels came back to the pavement. He was able to maintain traction while Johnson lost it, and that makes him the designated Coletta stopper in the finals, and he's doing it from the favorite spot. Kenny's got the lane choice.
You had a pretty good little wheel stand going there for a while.
Yeah, it was up, Steve, that's for sure. If it held there, you know, there's a point of no return there, and you hope that you catch it. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't.
491, but it popped the blower a little bit.
Yeah, it had a problem right at the finish line there. That's why it fell off. But, you know, these guys can fix it. Again, we're just tickled to be in the final for the first time this year.
Those are sweet words.
The smile on Kenny Bernstein's face tells it all. We'll be right back. The engines are fired in the funny cars for our semifinal round of competition, and John Force underway with his burnout, talking all the while with his crew chief, the co-crew chief, Bernie Federle, via the two-way radio communications link. Here is the McDonald's Oldsmobile. This is the car driven by Cruz Pedregon, the crew chief, Mike Green, but hired for the weekend, Big Jim Dunn, and he is certainly making some difference in this race car. Earlier, Steve had a chance to talk with him.
Big Jim, I hope you're making some money helping out those McDonald's guys, because you're not making any friends.
Oh, money? I mean, I get a lot of free tickets for hamburgers and stuff, and he doesn't make me pay to work on his car, so that's an advantage. I mean, I spend money to work on this thing, so I'm happy with him over there. And all I'm doing just trying to tune them up so they can beat Force and Hoffman and the guys, you know.
Okay, now, you've already made Hoffman mad, and Force is coming up.
Oh, yeah, well, I tried to stomp on Force that time. My strategy was to run 06, you know, and, well, it failed. So I think I'll change my strategy this time with him, and we're going to run 04 on it.
With the McDonald's.
With the McDonald's car. We got more money over there, so we can run quicker.
Don't be misled by Jim Dunn's soft-spoken attitude. He'll rip your throat out if he gets a chance. He's already had a 5:10 from his driver, Cruz Pedregon, but John Force has been the quicker car all weekend long. Qualified number 1 at an 05, and a 13 and a 21 in eliminations. That last 21 earned the Castrol car in the near lane the choice of lanes. great drag race, and it was only a matter of inches at the finish line that John Force won it because Cruz Pedregon got the advantage off the starting line and almost parlayed it into a win. Watch this in replay. 0.04 of a second, Pedregon was ahead of Force. As they made their way down track, Force just had to claw his way back. By the 1/8 of a mile, they were nearly even. At the finish line, it was just inches. The margin of victory on the clock, 0.03 of a second, and John Force goes into the finals.
Cruz, I think you thought you had won because you led the entire race until the last 2 feet.
Yeah, that's right, Steve. I didn't see the Castro car, but the McDonald's car had a great weekend. You know, I can't feel bad because we've been struggling, and John's the best. You know, we gave it our best shot, and want to thank all the crew and everyone at McDonald's for supporting us, and hopefully we're back.
I'd say so.
I'd agree, Steve. A 5:21 losing effort, but if he had been a little bit closer to the predictions put forth by Jim Dunn, it would be Pedregon headed to the final. Here's our next pair. Chuck Etchells up against Mark Oswald. Once again to the far end, and Steve Evans.
You have never been in a better drag race than that one.
Well, I saw that McDonald's hamburger stand. I couldn't believe it. There was a whole bunch of him, and I deeped her in. I thought I'd get him, but maybe that's what youth does because he put a little bit of car out there on me.
Were you even sure you'd won?
No, I really didn't. I was on the radio, and Bernie talked to me down here. I know what my heart's going to quit, but when you're racing Cruz, you got to put her in deep and shoot your best shot, and we pulled around and drove around him right down there to the other end, but he definitely had me covered on the starting line.
He is back, though. You know that.
May have to hire that kid one of these days.
If Force keeps hiring people, he won't have any money left. Here's inside the car with Chuck Etchells. That's what it looks like as you sit inside the fiberglass body of one of these 300-mile-an-hour creations. Oswald on the far side with the in-and-out Penhall International car. He lost the lane choice in round number 2 when he won with a 5:26 as opposed to Etchells' 5:13. Oh, another great race, and it was right at the finish line that Etchells came on. 5:22 the winning time at 287 miles an hour. Etchells, for the second week in a row, goes to the final round to race John Force. And again, Force, with a quicker elapsed time, holds the choice of lane. So a mid-season charge by Chuck Etchells in his brand new Dodge Avenger-bodied car. His crew chief, John Medlin's got to be happy. Steve?
Chuck, somewhere a 1/10 of a second evaporated from a 12 to a 22.
Well, it got out there and shook the tire real hard. I think it was starting to puff some smoke. I'm sure it did. And so I had to pedal the thing. So I'm shocked it ran 22 getting pedaled like that.
You love to race John Force, and you're going to get a chance to do that.
I didn't say I love to race John Force. Jeez.
He told me you did.
Steve, he loves to beat John Force. In the pit area of Scott Coletta, Dick LaHaye and crew working intently on the American International Airways car. They've got a lot of pressure on them. Scotty is going for an unprecedented 4th consecutive national event title. Shifting the gears on the burnout. This is the Dodge Avenger driven by Darrell Alderman. They call it Shamu, the new sleek shape. In fact, they even got a little whale painted on the race car. This is the earlier version Dodge, the Mopar Parts Daytona, driven by Scott Jeffreyon. And no, the fog's not rolled in over the San Francisco coastline. That's the smoke left inside the car after the burnout. Now, this is a bit of a perplexing problem for the folks at Wayne County Speed Shop that prepare both cars. They have achieved their goal. They have put them both into the finals. Who do they want to win? Well, I don't know what the answer to that is. You got to figure they want Jeffreyon to continue to win because he is leading in the Winston points chase. But they would also like to see the new Dodge Avenger do well because it is the latest model in the Dodge stable of race cars. And in fact, Jeffreyon will have his own Avenger to be debuted just a bit later in the season. On paper, it is all Alderman. He has been quicker throughout the day. 7:01 to qualify, then an 07, an 06, and an 04 in the 3 rounds of eliminations thus far. He's earned the lane choice. He's nearest our cameras. See who gets the advantage off the line. Jeffrey on by a bunch, but the Avenger pulls it out. The motor that they call Killer provided the power. Low ET of eliminations, 7.04 at 195 miles an hour plus. As we watch again, you see a driver do everything in his power to give the race to his opponent. Darrell Alderman was almost 1 week late. Now, in reality, about a tenth of a second. Normally, in pro stock competition, that is more than enough to lose a race. But Alderman pulled it out with power. Steve's with the winner.
From the pole to the podium, but you almost let that one get away, bud.
Yes, I did. You know, it looked like Scott got out on me there, and old Shamu come back on him in high gear there. You know, it was a good run. I don't know what kind of ET I run that time. It rattled just a little bit.
704.
704, it was the same as we run before. Well, I better thank my sponsors, Team Mopar, and I'd like to dedicate this race to a good friend of mine that's got cancer back home, Jim Jackson. This one's for you, Jim.
Well said, Scott. That was a great shot off the starting line.
When you're racing Darrell Alderman, you got to give it your best shot, or you ain't got a chance out here, trust me.
All in all, a great day for the Dodge guys.
Yeah, the whole team won after the semifinals, and heck, we can still be friends at the end of the day.
There's no doubt that the Dodge Avenger is fully developed and ready for prime time. Jeffrey on holds a slim 306-point lead over his teammate. Warren Johnson is in third, followed by his son Kurt, and Jim Yates rounds out the top 5 in the Winston standings. Funny car finalists, they're ready to go. The 5,000 horsepower thunder of a nitro-burning V8 inside the Castrol Chevy Lumina. While the same is being prepared in his opponent's lane, this is Chuck Etchels in the Kendall GT1 Dodge. The body comes down over Etchels. He looks out through that narrow slit of a windshield we saw earlier from our onboard camera shot. That is Austin Coyle. He heads up the brain trust that operates the John Force funny car. Goes back nearly 30 years in this sport, if you remember that far back. The Farconis Coyle and Minnick team, the old Chi-Town hustler. Well, that's the Coyle, Austin Coyle. The sunlight beaming into the eyes of Chuck Etchels as he tries to concentrate on the Christmas tree. The championship round here at the Autolite Nationals. Funny car eliminator. We'll have a winner in a moment. Oh, what a tremendous race. That is an absolutely incredible funny car final. The margin of victory was 1,000th of a second, and for the second week in a row, John Force is the winner, 5:14 at 290, and this time he did it with the slower elapsed time. Our instant replay shows you the pictures. Let me give you the times. Force had a 22,000th of a second difference at the starting line. At the finish line, in performance, the margin was 21 thousandths of a second. That left 1,000 left over, and it went to John Force. What a race.
Your driving was there when you needed it, John.
Yeah, I've been a little off. Coyle said the way they were running, I really needed to get after him because his car was running good, but we're happy. A little down on power when I hit it, it just boomed. It sounded like it tried to blow up. Then it just rocked and it shook and everything. And I want to thank all the sponsors, especially Fram Autolite for this race, and Castrol, and naturally the Jolly Rancher people, all the people, the Wax Shop, the Dorman, the people that pump the money in. But I want to stop right here, and I do a lot of dedications. It seems like a lot, but there's a very good friend of our families that died this weekend, Steve Pluger, who ran my race car for years, and his father, who supported us, Mr. Pluger, passed away this weekend. Not Steve Pluger, but his father did. It was a very big blow to our family, and we wanted to win it for him. And we just love you, and we just wish the family well.
Nicely said, John.
So John Force continues to extend his lead in the Winston points chase. He's followed by Al Hoffman, Chuck Etchels, Casey Spurlock, and Cruz Pedregon. Rounds out the top 5 after 11 races. Dale Armstrong looking very intent as his driver Kenny Bernstein backs into position after his long burnout. Bernstein holds the lane choice and has the distinction of being the driver trying to stop this young man, Scott Coletta, at the age of 30, trying to establish an all-time record in NHRA competition, that of 4 consecutive national event titles in a row. He has utilized the talents of his crew chief, Dick LaHaye, to perfection. It does not matter where Coletta races. His car is always competitive. Bernstein, after struggling through the first part of the season, finally beginning to make a comeback here at Sears Point and this Autolite Nationals. But it doesn't happen. He goes up in smoke, and across the finish line is Coletta with the all-time mark, 4 in a row, and he does it with a quick elapsed time, 4.80. And look at LaHaye with 4 up, and that is somebody trying to lift Connie Coletta. What a charge by his son Scott in the American International Airways car. From the outside, you see Bernstein smoke the tires the minute he hit the throttle, and it was over at that point as Coletta streaked on to take win number 4. You know, I may just have to get used to saying Scott Coletta, the reigning Winston champ. That is a distinct possibility. Steve?
You've made a little drag racing history, you know that?
I tell you what, 4 in a row, man. I tell you what, I don't know what to say.
480.
80 flat. Dicko stepped her up. I knew Kenny's been pretty consistent. He's been pretty decent on the lights, and I knew I had to go for it, and Dick knew he had to go for it. And hey, we'd have come out of here either 1760 ahead or 1960 ahead. So we almost couldn't lose in a way.
The big one was over the snake.
Yeah, I like that. You know, taking it, leaving on him and everything. And I'd have rather have raced Grandpa in the semis, but I'll take it.
I'll bet you will. Scott Coletta, 4 in a row.
Grandpa, of course, is Dad Connie, the wallet behind the American International Airways team. Scott's got a big lead over Joe. Connie is in 3rd, Don Prudhomme 4th, and Corey Mack rounds out the top 5. The 1994 NHRA Allied Signal Autolite Nationals has been brought to you by Allied Signals Autolite Spark Plugs, guaranteed for 2 years, no matter how far you go. And by Pennzoil, the motor oil you can rely on for performance, protection, and quality. What a great race it has been. Our congratulations to all the winners for Steve Evans. I'm Dave McClellan saying so long from Sears Point International Raceway. Coverage of the NHRA Allied Signal Autolite Nationals has been a production of Diamond P Sports in association with ESPN.